Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I'm going to be doing two soft pastel landscapes. One of them you can see on screen. We'll come back and look at the finished painting at the end of the video. And also you're going to see me doing the second painting kind of from start to finish, at least the edited version of that process. I'm using a mixture of Schmincke soft pastels and the Derwent XL charcoal blocks. So dry media, but a mixture of charcoal and soft pastels. And I'm using one of the charcoal blocks at the moment. The usual process, there's no references, just memory and imagination. And I use the dark charcoal block to just start making marks on the paper to build up a sort of composition. And I don't really, when I'm drawing these things, I don't know what I'm drawing. I'm just making marks and see what happens. That's just the way I do it. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it. It's what I do, and it helps me to create sort of quite loose finished paintings, I think. Because I just focus on the big details rather than, or the big shapes rather than all the little tiny details. I think if you're working from photographs, sometimes there's a temptation to focus on all those little details and maybe forget about the big shapes. And that tends to result in paintings that are not as loose, not as organic or spontaneous. The soft pastels that I use are Schmincke soft pastels. They are by far, I've tried a few different brands, but the Schmincke are by far my favorite. Schmincke pastels are basically, they are very basic. They're just pure pigment, or 99% pure pigment with a little bit of binder just to hold the thing together. And that's it. It's wrapped in a sort of paper, and that's it. That's all they do. There are videos on YouTube, and I'll try and remember to put a link in the description below, that show the process of Schmincke making these pastels. They're not cheap. A lot of sort of handmade type things are, of course, usually not cheap, but they are, in my opinion, very, very good soft pastels. And they really are soft pastels, not just in name, but they are actually soft. You get some soft pastels that are about as soft as a concrete brick. But the Schmincke pastels are not. They really are soft pastels. So you can put down colors quite easily. For years, I had a love-hate relationship with soft pastels. I love the immediacy of soft pastels. I love the fact that, you know, there's no brushes or anything involved. You just pick up the pastel and you start making marks on the paper. It's very direct. There's no drying time, of course, because it's a dry medium. So you can work fast. Again, I like that it suits my personality. And you can use the soft pastels for all kinds of different styles of art. And the style that most sort of influenced me was probably Impressionism. One of the artists in particular who's often associated with Impressionism was Degas, who used soft pastels, not exclusively, but he used them quite a lot, especially for his sort of ballerina paintings. Degas kind of started using soft pastels later in his career. His career is kind of divided into two parts, sort of pre-1863 and then post-1863, because something happened in I think it was 1863 or 1862, somewhere around there. Something important happened that year. He, as a young man, as a young artist, he often went to the Louvre in Paris, and he would copy the work of great masters. In his early days, Degas met the artist Ingres, and Ingres gave him some advice. Never paint from nature always from memory and copying old masters. So Degas took that advice on, and that was how he worked. And he did spend quite a bit of time in the Louvre and other art galleries copying great masters. And one day he was trying to do some engraving, some copper plate engraving by copying a great master. I don't know who it was. But that particular day, the artist Manet, not Monet, but Manet, happened to be in the Louvre as well. And they kind of met. Degas was struggling with his engraving. Manet gave him some advice, and after that they did become friends, at least for a while anyway. And one of the important things was that Manet introduced Degas to this new sort of modern approach to art, this contemporary approach. And that's how Degas, his art changed, and he became kind of connected with the Impressionists, even though he was never an Impressionist painter himself. But he did become associated with that sort of group of independent artists. Anyway, if you've never used soft pastel, I do recommend them. They're lots of fun. They can be anyway. They can also be incredibly frustrating until you figure out a way of using that suits your style and your personality. They can also be quite expensive, unfortunately, but I do recommend, if you have a chance, if you're able to, it's certainly worth trying out. These are the two final paintings that I did. The one on the right's the one you saw briefly at the start of the video, then the one on the left is the one that I was completing during the video. I was happy with both of them, just trying around different color schemes and things. And as I say, I was having fun with the whole thing, which I think is one of the main things, as I said before. No matter what mediums you're doing, what sort of subject matter you have, try to have fun with it. I think that's the main thing. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully see you again in next week's video.